Hello, and welcome to another episode from Season 6 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're changing things up. We're devoting a whole season to reviewing Esquire's list of the 50 scariest movies of all time. In each episode, we'll break down a different movie, talk about how scary it really was, and then update our rankings to prove how much smarter we are than the other people on the internet. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. So, I haven't decided what I think it means yet, but with some of these movies that we watch, I feel like no matter what website you go to, you get like the same 4 sentences describing it.
Yeah.
And
I
felt like this was one of those movies for sure.
This is a prime example. I was actually going to kind of get into that when I got to my facts.
Yeah.
Because I realized that my facts were just all IMDb facts on different websites, just in different order.
Yeah.
It was like there's nothing new. And I was like, this is like, I feel like this is probably a classic movie, like that multiple people have seen. You know, it's up there. And yeah, it was just really repetitive stuff.
Yeah. It was just like a combination of Roman Polanski's first English language movie, a beautiful young Belgian girl in England goes crazy in her apartment.
Yeah. And I got down the wormhole where like they were trying to like say like the hidden meanings behind it, behind this movie. And I was just like, you're stretching really hard. And also, if that's what it takes to like have a successful like blog or podcast, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see things at face value.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that was all just a preamble because I got my intro for this week, and I really didn't have a lot to go on, so I tried to church it up as best I could. You'll have to let me know how I did.
Well, if your notes are all about the symbolism in this movie, then I apologize for my previous statement.
I have a little bit of that, but not till later. So.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, we'll probably be okay.
Okay.
All right, I'll introduce it, and then you can do your facts, and then we'll get into it.
Sounds good.
In 1965, Compton Films released Repulsion, a British psychological horror film co-written and directed by Roman Polanski. This was Polanski's first English-language movie and came 3 years before his wildly successful project Rosemary's Baby. Repulsion tells the story of a young, mentally ill manicurist in England who sinks deeper and deeper into psychosis while her roommate and sister is out of the country on vacation. This movie was made on a budget of about £65,000 and brought in over $3 million at the box office. I'm not sure why they listed budget in pounds and box office in dollars, but that's all I could find, so whatever.
Oh yeah.
This movie can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video for $1.99, which, according to Google, is roughly 1.5 British pounds sterling.
Oh, you totally should have said just pounds only. That's hilarious.
Yep.
I've noticed, like, when editing our podcast that you're really good with keeping around the same amount of time for your intros.
Yeah, that's because it makes me not have to edit the music underneath it very much.
Yeah. Not me, not old Tom. You got to add 5 bars of it or you got to remove.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so this movie features the first depiction of female orgasm, sound only, to be passed by the British Board of Film Censors.
Indeed.
So this is Roman Polanski's first English language film. And this is another fact that I think we should dive into one day. Premiere voted this movie as one of the 25 dangerous movies. 25 most dangerous movies. And if our listeners don't know by now, we're list busters.
Yeah, yeah, very true.
So,
what did they find dangerous about this movie? Did you get like any more detail, or was it just that it was on the list?
I assume it was like the cutting up and stuff, but no, I didn't get anything specifics. I looked at the list though, and it's not a lot of horror.
Yeah.
So, this movie was actually produced, or it received financing from Compton Pictures, which was a soft pornography film. It was their main
Oh.
Yeah, production, distribution that they did. Mostly softcore porn.
Do you think anybody had like a mail subscription to their releases and they got this movie and they were just like, all right.
It's probably the writer to the 25 most dangerous films.
Yeah.
So anyways, those are my facts. There's also another fact that Roman Polanski appears in this film, but I looked and I didn't see him.
Yeah, I didn't see anyone that I would have guessed was him.
That he was dressed up as a woman, but I also read that he was dressed up as some other guy that was, I don't know, on a bridge or something. So
he probably just said he was in it so everyone would go back and rewatch it and look.
Yeah. Fooled me, Roman Polanski.
Yeah. So the thing we talk about a lot with these movies is pace.
Yeah.
And by pace, we generally mean how the movie unfolds. And it doesn't necessarily have to be action the whole time, but it's like the way that it does things to engage you and how far apart those are spread and how well that's pulled off and how good of a job it does at creating an environment that you can kind of get pulled into. And I think that for horror to work, that's really a thing that has to happen, because if you don't feel any sort of like empathy for the characters on the screen, or you don't feel like you too are in that situation, like you talk about with The Strangers, that being one of your favorite horror movies and also one of the movies you find the scariest, because there's nothing that prevents your brain from thinking this could happen to me.
You're right.
And then I feel like with a movie like Paranormal Activity, the way that they present it, where it's just sort of the camera from inside the house, if you're sitting at home on the couch in just like a normal house and you're seeing that, then all of a sudden you're catching stuff out of the corner of your eye. 'Cause like, wait, did something just move? There's nothing keeping you from inserting yourself into that situation and feeling like you're part of what's happening in the movie.
Right.
And I feel like roughly, because and we're working our way through a list that is the 50 scariest movies of all time, right? According to Esquire. I feel like the first 47 minutes of this movie were basically the least scary movie of all time.
Yeah.
And one of the most boring.
Yeah, I think for me, it was definitely boring. But once I kind of figured out what this movie was kind of about, I found it more interesting though. Like I was interested because it was like you see her losing it, from the get-go, or not from the get-go, but you see her like slowly start going crazy. And it made me think in one, like, so the first like you said 47 minutes of it, I was sitting there thinking like, I wonder if this is what it's like when you go crazy. Like you don't know what you're doing, but it's just everything going, it's going crazy around you. I thought it was kind of a good representation, I would think. But it was pretty boring for quite a while, but it did pick it up though.
Yeah, so 47 minutes in is where that first jump scare happened, which I thought was good. But like, I guess to me, I wish that they would have used the time like making you care about the characters a little more, or something. Like, because it just, I mean, like there were good things from a movie making perspective going on. Like there was a lot of deliberate things that were done, like the camera work and the angles and the panning, like all that was great. And there was a lot of silence, like with just a ticking clock or a dripping faucet, that I thought was like a good support for the mood that it was trying to create. And they would do the pans to the decaying rabbit on the plate or the sprouting potatoes to indicate that time was passing. Like the repeated imagery of the cracks on the wall and the sidewalk to show like her weakening grip on reality. Like artistically, it did a lot of cool stuff, and they all fit the scenes in the feel of the movie. But it was like 47 minutes of doing nothing and not going in. Like it just completely lost me, and I couldn't feel any sort of real sense of urgency or empathy or being scared. I just got real bored, and I feel like a lot of that could have been cut out, and they could have still worked a lot of that same stuff that was good from a movie making perspective into a much shorter movie that would have been more effective. It
was definitely kind of hard because it definitely seemed like they did just kind of jump into it. Like as far as the characters goes, it was just jumped into. You don't know who the guy is that's trying to like take her on a date. You don't know if they're dating. There's just he
was like a creep, man.
Yeah, for sure. He was for sure a creep. But like what got me thinking during kind of like once it started getting interesting was thinking to myself like, oh, like was he? Well, he was for sure real, but like the guy on the bridge, or like the guy who like kind of catcalls her right after she's leaving work early on, was he real? Like she walked by and noticed he wasn't there, and it was just like what was real and what wasn't real. But then it had like the scenes where they cut to the bar and the guys were kind of bragging about getting girls and stuff, and it was like this doesn't need to be here. Like,
what was the point of it? Yeah,
right. I mean, it doesn't pertain to the movie. Like if it's just a filler, like cut it down, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I felt like that was one example, but there were a number of examples of things that just didn't add anything and didn't really need to be in the movie and just made it longer. And then I thought that from a pace perspective, 47 minutes in, she's in her sister's room looking through the sister's clothes. And then she goes to close the door of the wardrobe, and you see a man standing behind her in the mirror's reflection.
Yeah.
But then he's gone, and it's like this big jump scare with the music and everything else, and you're like, okay, finally something, after being lulled into complete, like, catatonic boredom, something finally happened that was, like, interesting and exciting, and the way that they presented it in the scene really got your attention. So that was, like, effective in that it was, like, a big contrast. But man, the journey to get there.
That scene specifically was for sure effective. That was like, oh, this is what other movies have done in the past.
Yeah.
Like that's a prime example. That was done in what, like 68 or something like that? 67? Whatever it was.
I think it was 65. Yeah.
65? That's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that was influential. And you've seen this one, obviously, in looking at stuff about it online, that it's made a lot of lists and it's made, an impact on other directors. But I don't know. To me, it just really didn't resonate that well.
Yeah. I kind of also like the idea of the fact that they're, like that this movie is put out in 1965, like the Andy Griffith years, where like over, America, we had like those types of TV shows, and then it's just like Roman Polanski comes out with this Repulsion. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's
yeah. And after that, so after the mirror scene, I felt like it got better, and there were more like interesting things happening that were good examples of things that could have been happening more in the first part of the movie. So like when she's sitting awake in bed and she hears those footsteps in the apartment, and after that she's kind of outside and the music is louder and more aggressive, and then there's the guy that breaks in and assaults her, but there's no sound except like the ticking clock. And then the next day she's just awake and out and acting super normal. And you're like, what did I just see? Like, which one of these isn't real?
Yeah.
And and that, but then I guess later there was another scene like that, but it was after she had already nailed the board across the door. So at that point, that it's not really happening. And so I was curious if you thought that was supposed to be like a dream or a hallucination or like a flashback.
That's a good question, because I was kind of wondering the same thing. I think it was hallucinations. Now, it could be what happened to her. Yeah, I don't know.
Because I definitely read some stuff that seemed to say very authoritatively that it was a flashback, but I didn't see anything at all in the movie to support that. And it was just really kind of that one description that had it. I didn't see it anywhere else.
Well, I think the reason why I could see it be a thing is because it generally looked like it was the same guy.
Yeah.
That could have set it off, because she seemed like she was normal until now. I also wondered if sister that was kind of holding her together, and then her leaving for 12 days or 12 days was kind of like what she lost it because of that.
Yeah, well, and without anyone there, because she was just alone, and there wasn't really anyone to make her go to work or to keep her on schedule or to provide accountability or to question her actions. I feel like she kind of spiraled downward very quickly. And, obviously I think that whatever condition she had was getting worse, but also, with no help, there was nothing to keep it for her from just like falling into it fully. So,
yeah, that's true. I think I mean, I think for me, when it comes to this podcast, kind of like what you're saying, it's hard to talk about like the beginning and not get into like just the good parts because, it seemed like it was almost two totally different movies from start to finish. I think for me, so like you were kind of mentioned like seeing the guy in the mirror, which was really crazy. What I think helped it show that she was losing it was when she kind of trips into the wall and her handprints stay in the wall.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's a crazy idea, crazy trip, kind of thing where it's like she's just going through all this crazy stuff in her head and I think that was it for me.
And there were definitely some good ideas there, like when she starts kind of losing track of time and you're not really sure what's going on or where she is or what's real or what's not, and like she goes back in and she realizes she's left the tub running and it's overflowing, and then she just turns it off and doesn't make any attempt to clean it up, and she falls into the wall and like leaves the handprints, and you don't know if that's real, but then later you see like the hands coming back out of the wall. And so I think there were a lot of cool ideas. I just, again, the execution of them and the way that the movie was paced, I thought hurt it a little bit. If it had been a little bit more of a gradual build and a shorter total runtime, then I think like the overall arc of the movie could have been a lot better from a horror perspective, as far as like really pulling you in and making you scared.
Yeah, that's very true. I think, I don't know, I kind of like I went back and forth with this movie, specifically on like at first I was kind of almost frustrated with it, thinking it was another waste. But then like after I got that point, I was really like drawn into it and couldn't really stop watching it, and it really just interested me, the chain of events that happened throughout. Like, I mean, for me, I would almost say the ending starts from when her sister leaves. Like the ending of the movie starts from when her sister leaves, because it's just, that's like when it really hits. I don't know, I got a scene that was for sure. So the mirror scene was really creepy, really horrific. The other one I thought was when she was going to bed and she pulls the blankets back and the guy's laying in the bed. That really kind of tripped me out too. Like it's things that like goes into like the paranormal activity. Yeah, like you can kind of see yourself. It's like those weird kind of things happening in your home. Yeah, you're starting to lose it. I think there was another thing too that I feel like it kind of helped with this movie, and when I was reading about the symbolism things they were kind of talking about, but I'm not gonna get that. For me, when you saw the potatoes rotting, it was kind of how I kind of kept track of time.
Yes, 100% agree.
Like what days were what, and I was like, that's actually that's another cool idea. Like that's how you're gonna let them know how long it's been.
Yeah, definitely, and that I think too, like was kind of a neat way of doing that, because with it being in black and white, you couldn't really tell a lot about like even time of day a lot of times in the apartment, but going that with it was a creative way of showing that time was passing. Yeah. Also that she wasn't eating.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think the whole thing kind of culminated with the murders. She had 2 killings while she was in the house, and so the overall story of the movie is that you have this young girl who is losing her mind. You don't really know why, but her sister leaves on vacation. Her sister's also her roommate, and then she goes off with her boyfriend for a long time, and so the girl who's left at home is just sort of slowly losing it, and so she kind of stops going to work, and doesn't seem to be eating very much, and is laying on the floor and leaving the bathtub on until it overflows, and just sort of generally having a bad time, and then having these hallucinations about getting raped. Like it's intense, right? Yeah. And then there's the guy that she'd gone on a date with before, who she hadn't really shown a lot of interest in since then, and he comes and breaks down the apartment door because he knows that she's in there, but she won't answer his calls or something, which is creepy and weird. And then she ends up beating him to death with a candlestick, and then she barricades the door with a board and nails it shut, and then cleans up the evidence, I guess, by putting him in the bathtub, even though they didn't show that. But I guess that's what it implied when everyone got there later.
Yeah, he was in the water, yeah.
So, and then later the landlord shows up and kicks his way in, and she kills him as well. But he was like, I felt like he was equal parts sympathetic and creepy at first.
Yeah.
But then he turns the corner hard and goes full creeper, and then she kills him, and you're kind of okay with it.
You're not kind of.
Yeah. But I guess the question I had for you and all that, so initially when she picked up that board and nailed the door shut to keep so that no one could come in, mm-hmm. I had initially interpreted that as she was trying to cover up her crime. But in looking back at the movie now and thinking about it, I kind of think it was more her trying to keep people out because she didn't feel safe.
Yeah, I could see. See, that's another thing. I can kind of see both ways, but on this one specifically, I'm going to go with trying to keep people out. And that's basing it off of the guy who keeps showing up in her bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so that would, I mean, granted, when she did it was right after she murdered the guy. But I felt like she was more, I mean, she was trying to clean it up, but it was almost like she was more of a panic to keep that from happening. I thought to keep that from happening.
To keep another person from breaking in.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I had thought that maybe the theme of the movie was something about women like feeling sexualized and being repulsed by it, but not being able to escape. And so she retreats into her apartment, but they still keep coming for her. And then she lashes out, just in self-defense.
Yeah.
But then that leaves me with the question, why did she stab the old woman? And then also, like, what was up with all the hands coming out of the walls? Like, there was still some stuff in there that didn't really make a lot of sense to me, if that's what was happening.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I'm just speaking. Maybe it's because the criticism could come from the older women, and the hands coming out is the unwanted attention coming towards but I don't know. For me, the way I watched this movie, I didn't think of it with any of the symbolism. I just thought of it like this movie is just a lady slowly losing her mind until she's finally just lost it.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where she looks at her, or it shows her family picture, and she's just kind of looking off, like kind of mean, like it shows it at the end as well, but it shows it earlier in the film, and that kind of gave me the creeps too.
Yeah,
because
that
it's
was.
Like, this is almost like she's kind of lost it from the get go, because it really focused on it too. So I was thinking like, okay, maybe she's just been crazy this whole time, and she's just had enough. But
yeah, and I kind of feel like too there was a little bit of like in American Psycho, and I haven't seen the movie, but I read the book, and there's the part where he's basically like begging for someone to stop him. It's like he's getting crazier and crazier, but his behavior is getting more insane, because it's like he's pushing the boundary of what can I do that will be so over the top that someone will finally stop me.
Yeah.
And I almost wondered if there was a little bit of a similar thing going on here, where she just wanted people, or maybe she was going crazy because no one saw her like as the person she was. They just saw her as a means to something else. So the men obviously were just interested in her for her looks. Her employer was just interested in her for her labor. And then her sister really just saw her as like a roommate, like someone that was supposed to run errands and handle things around the apartment while she was off doing what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so nobody in the movie seemed at all really interested in her or what she was going through, except for the one coworker who she was only around, a few hours a day. And so to me, it felt like a psychological profile of a struggling person, not a horror movie. And I feel like from a horror perspective, like I feel like there were a lot of really good things about this movie, but I feel like from a horror perspective, Maniac took a very similar idea and just did it way better.
Yeah, I could definitely see that too. Touching back on her friend, I'm kind of going back and forth on this movie, because her friend, she went through like a breakup, was crying down like in their little room. And that could have fed to the whole, men are after to get, after them. But I think for me, like, I could definitely see the maniac idea. I just liked the idea of not seeing someone in real life, but how I interpreted this movie was they were just losing it from the get go, and you just see them slowly doing it. That's what I think is almost more scary to me than some of those horror scenes.
Oh yeah, true.
Because that's for me. But it did have some pretty sketchy scenes. All the hands coming out, the wall tearing open, and it happening to a person who doesn't understand that that's not real life.
Yeah,
and that's where it gets me. But yeah, I think comparing apples to apples, I think Maniac did it a little bit better.
Have we ever talked about Shutter Island?
We haven't. I haven't ever seen it though.
Okay.
My brother was just telling me about it though.
Weird. But yeah, I think we should watch it. Because thinking about it, I think that a lot of people involved with that story may have been influenced by this movie.
Oh, okay.
Now that I think about it. But I think that it is an absolutely amazing movie. I'm just not 100% sure that I'd call it horror. But sort of the way that you've described this one, where like the whole idea of like losing your mind or not being sure what's real and what's not, that would kind of...
That's a real life horror. That's not a ghost in your room kind of thing. Like that's like something that's likely to happen to a person.
There was a movie, I can't remember the name of it. Give me 2 seconds and I'll look it up, and then we can...
Or like a ghost in your room. I mean, like, this is not that that's not likely, but just that if you were going crazy from just the things I've read and watched, you know it. You don't know that you're going crazy. The next thing you know, you get calls from mortgage companies. They're trying to get your roof against their house.
Yeah. So there was a movie several years ago called Still Alice.
Oh, okay.
With Julianne Moore.
Yeah.
About a woman that has Alzheimer's. Or is developing it. And what she's going through. And like losing her identity and her sense of self and stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, that was one of the scariest movies of that year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
She killed a lot of people in it, probably.
I don't know. It definitely was not meant to be a horror movie.
Oh,
but it just, yeah, it was. I'm not giving away the ending, but yeah.
Well, if it's Alzheimer's, she's not good.
Yeah. But yeah, so maybe that's kind of a different genre of horror, is like the real life, real sad, real scary that could definitely happen. Yeah.
Like a life horror.
Yeah.
Whereas, like Rosemary's Baby. Well, I guess Rosemary's Baby is the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just it kind of opens up your eyes to like, oh, this is another type of horror that they were doing. I'm not gonna get.
I like it better than body horror.
I hate the symbolism idea, but I actually kind of like it. But it's always just interpretation. You never look up like what does this song mean, like song lyric meanings. You don't look that up. It's someone's interpretation.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of the best songs or the most relatable ones are the ones that are the most vague, because people can kind of like project their own experience onto it or whatever. But yeah.
Overall, I enjoyed it. I don't think I just enjoyed it because of the list either. Like I think it was actually pretty good. It reminds me of Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah, a little bit. I could see that. I just wish, because it definitely, I mean, like I mentioned before, and I know I'm saying the same thing over and over, but I feel like this one had a lot of good ideas and it did some cool stuff, but just the way that it was all put together, I feel like they could have edited, 30 of the first 47 minutes and it would have been better off for it. So. Yeah,
we run into that with a lot of movies too, though.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I think also for its time, like I'm sure there's a book out there where before this movie came out, but to put something like this in cinema that during the glory days of American TV, like you just have this crazy thing coming on, and I'm sure it influenced a lot of horror movies for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that's one thing, that we definitely will never be able to fully appreciate is like what it was like to see this movie at that time when, all that you'd seen up until that point was, black and white or lower budget or, kind of quaint older stuff.
It kind of makes me want to have a kid and just make them watch these movies first off and just see how crazy they are. They're like a science experiment.
Yeah.
I won't even love it. Like, I'll just like...
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and the thing is, you got to have a bunch so you can try different...
Yeah.
I mean, scientific method, bro. You got to have a control. Yeah. You got to change one variable at a time. You have to measure results.
Well, I would just do the yawn test. Did you know that most psychopaths don't yawn if you yawn in front of them?
I yawn all the time.
But you're not a psychopath. Have you ever seen me yawn?
I was actually just asking myself that same question.
Because they say that they don't have that connection to people.
Yeah, like that empathy response.
Yeah.
Do you think sociopaths like horror movies? Because if they can't empathize with any of the characters, they'd probably be kind of bored.
Yeah, that's probably where they get some of their smut films from. Watching shit like Sallow.
Oh yeah, I'm not watching that movie.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like sociopaths are pretty into themselves so much that they probably have trouble watching like TV unless they're in the news, Yeah,
I can see that.
Specifically thinking of the BTK killer.
Yeah. Well, on that rather pleasant note.
Last thing, real quick. This pertains to the movie. If you're a neighbor and something like that's going on, don't get in the don't. I got so mad at.
When she just got in the elevator instead of like doing something when that guy broke in.
Mine was when all the neighbors were coming down.
Yeah.
Just going in the room. What's going on?
Just walking around. Yeah.
See out of this house.
Yeah.
You need to cut up next, fool.
Yeah. Well, and I think another important thing too is from two sides. One is of everybody in the movie, it was really only the coworker that did anything beneficial to this situation. Yeah. And I feel like the lesson to be learned there is, hey, if you know somebody that's having a hard time, help them out. Check in on them, like...
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want to have to talk to cops if they come. So don't talk to me about any of your problems.
Oh, yeah. You can just...
When cops come, I'm just like, I don't know, man. We don't talk.
Yeah.
He's the best friend I ever had. We don't talk.
And the other side of that is if you're in a situation where you feel like you're in a downward spiral and you've left a plate full of rabbit meat where your phone used to be for the better part of 2 weeks, maybe it's time to reach out. There's people out there that are willing to talk to you, and isolation is never the answer. Get some input, talk to some people that care about you and that have good perspective on life, and it'll go a long way.
You're at the local 5 and dime, you're going to pay for a nice cold Coca-Cola, you open your purse and you got a dead rabbit's head in there, get some help.
And the thing is, by virtue of us recording these episodes, we're always available. You can download these anytime, day or night, and listen to two charming young men talk to you about something you love, which is horror movies. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but we're still here.
We won't stop. Steve, you son of a bitch, quit emailing us.
I thought you were going to say, we won't stop unless you change your behavior.
Yeah.
Like a threat.
We'll stop the podcast. Yeah.
We will not stop the podcast unless you get better.
That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we're done.
I was going to end that podcast with that Roman Polanski. He's kind of a bad guy, huh?
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
So, I got a fact.
Okay.
It's not about this movie.
Even better.
So, for the people out there, if you ever want to refinance your house and you do a credit report, say with your mortgage company that you're doing it with, or if they sold it, whoever you're doing it with, just know that other companies can get that credit report and offer you their interest rates to refinance their house. Now, I say this because I got a call from my mortgage company asking about refinancing. I was like, no. I want to get this interest off that or like this whatever federal thing.
The PMI or something else?
It's like FHA insurance.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I want to get that off. So if you can get that removed, then hell yeah, I'm in. And he's like, well, we'll probably have to pull your credit. I was like, and he's like, we have to for this. So I was like, okay, whatever. We have good credit, whatever.
Yeah.
I've been getting phone calls from this mortgage company called Amerisave's Mortgage. I want to blast them because I got cussed out by a lady today.
Oh.
She said, I answered. I said, yeah, there's Tom. She said, Tom, I'm with so-and-so with, I want to ask you about refinance your house. I said, no, thank you. I'm good. How did you get my number, by the way? And she said, well, you just recently asked for a refinancing. I said, yeah, but not with you guys. Anyway, long story short, she started yelling at me. I swear to God, she's yelling at me, and she's going, you don't want a 3.125 interest rate for your house? And I was like, I'm only like one point off, or
yeah.
I'm not too bad, and I'm not gonna, I don't even know what this tells. I don't, I'm good. She snapped at me. She cussed me out and then hung up on me.
Why am I angrily discussing my finances with a stranger?
I know. I was like, I'm not going to get into this. But I was also like, hey, why do you have my credit report?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I had to go off on that. I didn't know. I haven't, this whole house thing is still relatively new to me. Yeah. So I don't know the refinancing. I mean, or I should probably know, but whatever.
Well, I've never done that. So I didn't know. Obviously. Yeah. Certainly not now. But I didn't know for a long time that people looking at your credit score lowers your credit score.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
That seems a little dumb to me.
Well, yeah. Credit in general is dumb. We can have a whole separate podcast on that because I could snap about that. Mine went down 5 points just for them looking at it. And then the credit bureau gave my information out.
I know. That's so dumb.
It's like, what the hell's going on here? God dang. Anyway, so this movie features the first depiction of a female orgasm passed by the British Board of Film Censors.